Hi, gorgeous humans. So I just wanted to do an overview of the Dutch because the version of this that I've done before is so old, and I was like, it needs a refresh. So this is just for people who really want to understand a little bit more about why you would do a Dutch and what it can tell us. So firstly, I just want to show you this. This is basically what the Dutch is analysing, right? Which, don't worry, you don't need to understand. But basically, these are what we call steroid pathways. And it's basically, these hormones are steroid hormones, right? This is what we call them, steroid hormones. And they go down these different pathways. And we're looking at what's going where and what is happening as a result. So we have the master hormone at the top, which is at the top is pregnenolone. And then this can go down into progesterone, and we look at the metabolites of that. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It can come across this way, go to make DHEA. DHEA, it then gets converted into other hormones. So it goes this way, comes on to make testosterone. It comes this way, goes make estrogen. It comes this way and down here. So these things, sorry, I've got this terrible cough at the moment. They go on to make other things, right? And they convert between each other. So testosterone can convert into estrogen. Estrogen, we have 3 different estrogens, and we see what's going on with those. And then like we metabolize estrogen down different pathways. We have a proliferative pathway that makes things grow. So you might get fibrocystic breast, you might get heavy periods. You might get, this is like the good pathway, this is like the bad one. This want to make sure we're not using too much of this, because this creates like bad metabolites in the body that go on to damage the body. We see how we're methylating it, going into phase 2 detoxification. Again, I'll explain this in a minute, don't worry. And then we have this pathway coming down to make cortisol. And we look at cortisol versus cortisone and what's going on with the adrenal health, right? So this is basically what the Dutch is looking at. And then this is an example of a Dutch. This is a really old test of mine. I did this because we were going to try for a baby, and I just wanted to see where everything was, because I knew I had low estrogen. I had a really light short bleed, but I didn't know what was going on with other stuff. So this is a pretty boring example compared to some of my client examples, but obviously I can't screen share client results. Like I screen grab little bits, but because they have personal data on them, I can't do it. So I'm afraid you're gonna have to look at a really boring example, but I'm gonna talk you through a few little things. So this is called a Dutch complete. I actually use the Dutch plus now with my clients. The only difference that you would see on the actual diagram is this would be blue rather than red. The Dutch plus is just a bit more accurate in the free levels. So we have metabolized cortisol and free cortisol, and metabolized is tested in the urine, and the free is tested in the actual saliva. And this kind of predicts the free. It isn't actually true free in the same way the plus is. So I actually use the plus now, and you sort of see this, you see that in blue, but other than that, everything else is the same. So this is a summary page at the start, and then we go into each of these markers in more detail. So I'm not going to talk you through the summary page. And then again, these tables, again, these sort of are better for a client, for like a non-functional medicine practitioner. Like going through all of these is too much. So I generally just talk through the actual diagrams. So let's start off with the adrenals. So what we do is we test the adrenal health. And so the adrenal health is looking at, what's going on, hypothalamus, the pituitary, and then go down to the adrenal. We have the hypothalamus, pituitary, then the ovaries, the gonads, testes. We have hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid. So we always start off, it always starts in the brain. Hormone always start in the brain, right? And everything comes off feedback loops, like how much is in the blood? How much do we need? Let's feedback. Let's send the messages to go make something. So it starts off in the brain. So what we look at with the adrenal health is we look at your preference for cortisol. Sorry, we look at how much you are actually making from the adrenals, and then we look at how much you've got free and available to use. So metabolized cortisol is actually the best reflection of how the adrenals are actually functioning. Are they producing enough cortisol? Are they producing really high levels of cortisol? Are they producing too little cortisol, adrenal fatigue stage? Where on this picture are they in terms of how much cortisol they're producing? Are they like chronic stress up here? Are they completely burnt out down here? Are they somewhere in the middle? And that's the best reflection of what the adrenals are actually making. But then we also see free levels, and this is what we see in the diagrams. The free, so again, this will be blue in the plus, which is what I actually use now. It's like, okay, they're making all this, but what is available for the body to use? Now, that's only 1 to 3% of total cortisol, right? So the reason I don't like testing cortisol in saliva, this is what happens if you go to a GP, they probably test your morning cortisol and tell you what your adrenals are doing. That is so inaccurate. A, it's just looking at your morning level, and B, it's only looking at the free available to use. That doesn't indicate how much the adrenals are actually making. So your adrenals could be pumping out, it could be really high, right? It could be right up here, really, really high. It's chronic stress, you're pumping out a load of cortisol, but you've got like below range free because the body's trying to clear out the body so quickly because it's had this high cortisol for so long. So it's trying to get rid of it so quickly. You could have the opposite, right? You could have really low levels of adrenal output, but your body is hanging on to it because you've got so little. So you could have high levels of free cortisol, but that's not really that's giving an unfair picture of like what the adrenals are really doing, because actually completely burnt out and they stop making it, right? So these two pieces together are really, really important, which is why I always test adrenal health through Dutch testing. And then the bonus is we also get the sex hormones as well. So it's also going to look at your preference for cortisol versus cortisone. So, for example, I have a mild preference for cortisone here, but you could be like a really strong preference for cortisone. So again, lots of different reasons why you could have high metabolized versus low metabolized, high cortisol versus high cortisone. Like, it's not just stress, but from a stress perspective, say that was something that was driving it. If you had a really high preference for cortisone, that'd be a really chronic stress picture. You've been pumping out cortisol for so long, the body's trying to slow you down because cortisone is an inactive form of cortisol. It's your rest, stop, pause hormone. So it's trying to slow you down. So that is that bit. Also looking at our DHEA. DHEA is like a master hormone. So yeah, I'll go to that page and talk about it on this page. Okay, so that is like, so it looks at all this stuff on the adrenal health, and then it's looking at what's going on with your sex hormones. Okay, so how much of the sex hormones do you actually have? With estrogen, we have 3 different estrogens. This is predominant in the menopausal years. This is predominant in pregnancy, and this is predominant in our premenopausal years. So on the summary page, the one that they pop there will be the one that's where you are. So premenopausal, so they focused on my E2. So we're going to look at where estrogen levels are. Are they high? Are they low? Where are they? And then we're going to look at how you're detoxifying them. So we've got these 3 different pathways. So as you see, like I've got like lower levels of estrogen, and I'm also not using the 16 pathway at all. So the 16 pathway is the proliferative one. It makes things grow. It's going to have like a thicker uterine lining. You might get fibrocystic breasts, but because you've got a thicker uterine lining, like say you're up here, you were having absolutely loads of the 16 pathway. You could then also have like more heavy, painful periods. Well, you will have heavier periods, but you also have more painful periods because like there's more to get rid of. So you might have more prostaglandins coming in to contract the uterus and get it all out as well. So I've actually had a client who had below range estrogen, but really high 16 and was having really heavy periods. And if I hadn't tested, I would have been focusing on lowering estrogen levels. Well, actually, I didn't. Like, the last thing we want to do is lower estrogen levels when she's got such little. We actually needed to raise it. And the body's like upregulating the use of this pathway because she had so little. So it's like, okay, let's raise estrogen so she's got more, and then she'll naturally stop using this pathway as much and start sending it down like a nicer pathway, right? This is like the nice pathway, like nice metabolites, don't damage the body. This is like more negative pathway, damages the body, right? So we look at, okay, have we got the right percentage split of those? Are we using the pathways in the right way? And then are we methylating? So methylation is like involved in lots of different things. Sorry, this blooming cough. But it's in loads of different processes like neurotransmitters, all the different things, but it's one of the processes that happens in phase 2 detoxification. So what we do is we have estrogen at the top, we take it through phase 1 detoxification, then we take it through phase 2 detoxification, then we basically poo it out of the body. So what we don't want to do, if we've got a really overloaded phase 1 and we're not like going through phase 2 so when we detoxify estrogen, we need to focus on pooing first, right? Because we need to make sure it's got a way of getting out of the body. Then we need to focus on phase 2. Okay, is what's coming through phase 1 able to get through phase 2, or we're just getting a backlog and sending estrogen back into circulation because it can't get through phase 2, right? So this just gives a bit of an indication of what's going on here. Sulfation is another process that happens in phase 2. So we're looking at, is DHEA getting sulfated into its sulfated form? So again, that can give an indication. If you're a low sulfator and you're a low methylator, then again, phase 2 might be like struggling as well. So yeah, we look at that, and then we look at progesterone. So okay, are levels strong? Do they indicate you actually ovulated in this last cycle? We test 5 to 7 days after ovulation. Did you actually ovulate? And then what's your predominant metabolite? So for example, this pathway, this metabolite crosses the blood-brain barrier, upregulates gamma, our calming neurotransmitter, it helps us sleep. So say, for example, you had really low levels here, then you could say, okay, you're probably going to have less like GABA naturally because you're not getting that upregulation. So how can we look at supporting GABA in a different way because you've not got that progesterone doing that job for you, particularly if you're having like trouble sleeping and you had anxiety and stuff, like we'd be looking at GABA from that perspective. So that's the progesterone bit. And then we're going to look at the balance between estrogen and progesterone. Are you estrogen dominant, you're progesterone dominant? And then DHA, then we go down to, these are all like male sex hormones, the metabolites. So we've got testosterone, and we've got these two metabolites, and this is the more androgenic one that's often associated with people who have more androgenic symptoms like facial hair, male pattern baldness, really like intense acne, darker hair on the body, around the belly button, around the nipples, that kind of thing. So we could, if you had an upregulation of this one, for example, we can like stop that happening and send more down here to decrease your androgenic symptoms. Another thing that I sometimes find, if it's like people have like really high testosterone and low estrogen, and then they're probably not using that pathway, the aromatase, converting testosterone to estrogen, or the opposite, they have really high estrogen and really low testosterone, so they're probably upregulating this pathway, so then we want to block it. So that kind of thing can help as well, that piece of information as well. So that's kind of what I'm getting out of like sex hormone stuff. And then obviously it's all personalized, there's more to it, but and then the last bit we look at is just some, these are called organic acids and some markers. There's a lot more now, actually. I've just realized that actually there's a lot more that we actually look at now than we did back in 2020, clearly. But we look at B12, B6, we look at glutathione, our body's master antioxidant. Have we got good levels of that master antioxidant that's needed for so many different processes? If that's low, we want to like get those levels up. We look at our dopamine levels and our adrenaline levels. So again, have we got the raw ingredients to make them in the first place? Okay, have we got enough dopamine? We're converting all of our dopamine into adrenaline, basically. Melatonin levels, they were also on that little graph before, but like waking melatonin, do you have appropriate melatonin? Are your melatonin levels low? Do we need to try and increase those? And then oxidative stress, which is really interesting from progesterone production perspective. Well, oxidative stress goes around and damages all the cells in the body, but it actually damages our eggs, and then can lead to like poor quality eggs, and poor quality eggs lead to a poor quality corpus luteum. The thing that gets left behind after ovulation starts producing progesterone. So have we got damaged eggs? Are we making poor progesterone because we've got high oxidative stress and some inflammation going? There's some markers in here that tells about inflammation as well. That can help direct where we need to go with progesterone production as well. There's like a gut marker as well now. I've got biotin. There's a few more in here. But yeah, these are all basically relevant for hormones and adrenal health, and that's why they include them. But that is, oh my God, my balloons are going off. Honestly, it keeps doing this and I don't know why. That's an overview of what we get with the Dutch. So I just wanted to put that there so you can just like kind of go, okay, this is what a Dutch is and this is sort of things I'm going to find out. If you have any questions, please message me about it. I hope it was helpful, and yeah, send you lots of love.